You have now everything set to create your first Redux application. First thing to do is to import createStore method from Redux. Then step 1, you create the store. Step 2, you create and dispatch actions. Step 3, you define the reducers. In order to create the store, you pass the reducers as an argument to createStore method. To see what is the current state in the store, you use the subscribe method that adds a listener to the store, and you log the result using getState. An action is made by an object that has two properties, type and payload. Type is a keyword in Redux, but payload you can call it as you wish. We are creating a counter, and therefore we could name our type as increment, and we set the payload to 1. You create a reducer by passing two arguments, state and action, and returning the state. But the use of reducers is to evaluate what to do with the received action. So we will add a switch statement, and if the action type is equal to increment, we will update the state, adding the payload. We then have to set the initial value for the state. Otherwise, we won't be able to add any payload. Now, if you save and look to localhost, you should see that the current state has been updated correctly. You can now try to dispatch other increment actions, and if you save and check the result, you see that the state is changing after each action is dispatched. Let's try to add a new action type to decrement the current value. If you save and test, you should see that decrement action is working perfectly on updating the state. I think you are now ready to create a little bit more complex actions. Let's take the case where you want to pass an entire object to the state. To do that, we can create a postbook action type, and as a payload we could write something resembling an entire record from a database. We could add an ID, a title, and a description, and a price. You can remove our decrement reducer, and of course, you need to change the initial state to be an object type of value, and add postbook in the switch statement. Finally, if you save and refresh your browser, you should see our state has changed and made of two objects. This is because we are still adding the payload to the state. So let's set the state equal to the payload and replace the plus sign in the log with a comma to properly display the object in the log with all its properties. So save and refresh the browser, and now you should see that your state has been updated nicely with an object and all its properties. Any component of your application can now access to the object and properties. In fact, you can add a log to capture just the price, and if you save and refresh again, you see that the price was captured.